big issue up here was that with all the things that were happening around the province, as things were changing with the government, with Ron and Janet noting that we had this big space without any sort of protection, the common ones like the conservation areas or any protected places, that, and then Caledon was becoming a worn out source of limestone. And of course the Elvar could become a concern.
And at that time as well, with Mr. Harris coming into the provincial government and cutting back on him and our staff, particularly the scientists, some of whom worked in the area, no longer being there to sort of keep a watch on what was going on, a decision was made that we needed to do something.
Mm-hmm. And wanted to maybe start something here because it was really, you know, fledgling, unheard of in Ontario at that time. And we talked about all the pros and cons of conservancies and how to avoid, you know, being inadequately funded or, say, interfered with by government or, you know, lost in perpetuity. So we spent a lot of time discussing what would be the very best way to get something like this going in our area. And at the time, we knew that this area was under siege, that everything was moving north from Toronto, and our, you know, all our habitats were going to be threatened. It wasn't, even over 30 years ago, we were very, very concerned.
At the very, very beginning, before we even formed an organization, was to spend a lot of time talking and discussing and going over the possibilities and trying to figure out just exactly what we wanted to do. So it was a whole year before we actually started the process of becoming an organization, which I think was very smart to spend that time.
One of the issues in that discussion was whether or not it needed to be a new separate organization or whether it could be sort of an offshoot of the Aurelia Naturalist Club, because most of the people that were involved had, you know, were also involved in the nature club, and ultimately, after quite a bit of discussion, we came to the conclusion that it would just be too awkward within the nature club. Partly because they were, especially then, you know, it was almost everything they did had to go through the executive committee, and then it often had to go through the membership, and we were sort of thinking about, could we imagine, you know, getting the approval to go out and purchase a piece of land, for example. It would just be so awkward. So eventually that's why we decided that a new organization was the way to go. I did a project, a consulting project for the Ontario Heritage Foundation, it was called then, which was looking at land trusts and what was the potential for bringing land trusts to Ontario. And so I actually went down and met with 4 of the different land trusts in the northeastern US, which was really interesting. And I couldn't persuade them that they should send me over to Europe, but I did, you know, talk by phone to several of the trust organizations in the United Kingdom, and I think corresponded with 1 or 2 others in Australia. But there, at that point, it was, except for the U.S., it was pretty early going.
There was so much to do. I mean, we were trying to overcome the static friction of not having any properties. You know, we had to get one property so that then others might follow. Yeah. And that was rural wetland, was it? Or what was the first?
Grant Wetland.
Was it Grant?
Yeah, I think it was Grant Wetland and Bay Street
And Bay
Wetland
Street,
came
yeah.
first, and then rural came very shortly after that. Yeah.
And anyway, so of course we were looking for properties and donors of properties. we were also concerned about building a reputation in Aurelia. And so we had to get public communication out through the media, through word of mouth. We had to build a membership, and so we were looking at, you know, $25 members from the public and corporate members and founding members who'd give how much? $1,000. And then at the same time, we're building an organization, so we have to have bylaws and a charter and policies. The first policy, as I recall, was an advocacy policy, which I think is very telling.
Yeah.
But anyway, and then when was the National Heritage Action Plan launched?
Oh, in the
Well,
second
that
year.
was like, yeah, the second year at least, yeah.
And we were looking for grant money, of course, but perhaps the most significant thing in the first years, what, in my view, was building a board culture. A culture within the organization, of course, led by the board, which was a culture of respect, a culture of listening to each other. I noted the comments of board members who were all saying, I like this organization, it feels good.
Oh,
It
lovely
feels
thing to
good.
say.
And
Nice.
I think that was one of the great advantages of having Gord involved, was because that's kind of, you know, where you come from in a sense, your background, right?
You
And
shared that
so
attitude
having-
with us.
Yeah, you shared that with everybody, and you really, I think, brought that kind of dynamic to the whole group, and
I agree.
we all really bought into that.
That's true.
But without you there, I'm not sure anybody else would have brought that forward.
You would have brought that, especially.
I'm not so sure,
because-
no,
as-
not so sure.
The one thing that really got us into the public eye was the donation of the Grant wetlands down on Bay Street. And because of that, and getting stories in, and people were interested in what was going on, so we had lots of pictures taken down there. And as I say, that's how it started, and it just kept going.
And amazed us all that, oh my, they're interested? Oh my, we're going to go there next?
Gord said, you should come and join with us. I said, well, that's great, but I do not want to attend any more meetings in my lifetime. And,
They've been meeting out.
yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I ended up going to Si's house with the group that had been identified as sort of the initial group, and thought this was got to be good, and I got into the discussion of with Bill Holdsworth about getting the organization registered and what's the word I'm looking for, but anyway, get it legally set up.
Incorporated.
Yeah, incorporations, and so it has gone on from there actually.